Today is your friendly neighborhood Christian, and today's Friday word is about circumcision of the heart. So the heart is actually the heart obviously in our life is our most important organ, right? Because the heart pumps blood, and blood gives us oxygen, and oxygen gives us life, right? So I don't know if you may know, but one of my side gigs is teaching CPR, so I know a lot about the heart. But the heart is the central part. And even in the Bible, the heart is considered the conscious. It's considered the central, it is our conscious of our being. All things come from the heart, right? There is the idea of this mind wisdom and heart wisdom. And while the mind wisdom is very useful in certain situations, when it comes to our emotional life, right, the heart is also important as well, right? When you really want to figure out what is something that you're really thinking about, what is something that is really that you really want, you always want to go to your heart. Right? Now, some people may say, well, no, because the heart has us make silly decisions, right? If I went just from my heart, I did this, and this from the heart. I stayed in this relationship because of the heart. Well, that is a discussion in itself. But I would say that when it comes to some of those decisions, was it really from the heart or was it from the head? Because were you making decisions from, if I leave this relationship, I will be lonely. If I leave this relationship, who will love me? If I've been in here too long, blah 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 blah, right? If you stayed in a job, was it for the heart, or was it, who else will hire me, or I've been here so long, or I need to get my investment, or such and such and such, right? So sometimes, again, we want to work with the mind, body, and spirit, right? But you don't want to forget the heart, because when decisions come from here, that's when we have situations where people are moving from places of needing for like financial reasons. Well, it's not personal, it's business. Like, what does that even really mean, right? So all those sort of things, that kind of conversation comes from when we're only thinking with the mind and we're not thinking with the heart. Right? If we're like, well, they disrespected me, so this is so and so and so. Again, it may be valid, but that's a decision you're making from here, right? And you're not making from here. And when these two come together, you have a sort of a different movement, right? Many of the things that's happening right now in our society, right now, what is in our current situation, are decisions that are being made from here. They may be made from decisions about money. They may be decisions about what is immediate, right? But not necessarily what is the most empathetic, not what is most considerate. And also being from the heart is not just completely woo-woo, right? It's not all just like kumbaya, let's hold our hands together. But sometimes when you make decisions from the heart, it can be the hardest decision. It can be a difficult decision. It can be decisions where, where your mind is like, this is where I need to stay, but your heart is telling you, you need to go. Right? It can be it's not an easy place to live from the heart. Maybe someone has hurt you and you're like, but you should hurt me like I should hurt you like you hurt me. But they're going through a hard time and your head is telling you, are you crazy? But your heart is saying, you know what you need to do. It can be very difficult. It's again, the walk of a Christian is a walk with many benefits, but it's not an easy walk, because it's not a walk that goes in line. It's not always the easiest path. Sometimes it's the most narrow path that you have to take. So with the circumcision of a heart, we think of Proverbs 4:23, guard your heart, because from all things from there springs life. Right? It is important to guard your heart. And sometimes we can see that as guarding your heart is only from a place of like fear. Like, that's right, people are out to get you, so I got to guard my heart. Well, that's one way to think of it, but also to guard your heart in terms of if you're in an industry or you are around a certain group of people and you're hearing things that you're like, you know what, that's not in accordance with my faith. That doesn't feel like the movement of God right now. And sometimes you have to guard your heart and be like, you know what, I can't be affected by what's going on, right? That whole idea of living from the inside out as opposed to the outside in. When we're letting the outside in, sometimes we have to be careful. We're hearing images or seeing things that we know don't really edify people, or not bring out the best in people. It may be what's cool at the moment. It may be what's will get me the immediate. If I do that, that'll get me that promotion I'm looking for. But will it be in accordance with your ideals, right? So in that situation, that's always also a situation of guarding your heart, right? Because part of the circumcision of the heart is the change of the heart. It is when you're having a circumcision of the heart, when God is saying circumcise your heart, is to give away, to move away from things that are idolatries that are not in accordance with me. Now, of course, sometimes that when we hear idolatries, we're just thinking of people who have faiths of multi-gods or multi-spirits, and that's the pervading image. That's not really what I'm talking about here. In terms of the idols, I also believe, this is my interpretation in terms of with the Bible, is idols is anything that takes you out in accordance with your walk with God, right? If you need to do something that you know that goes against your belief, that goes against your faith, if you need to do something that where they're like, well, okay, we know these people need that money, but right, we really want to sip it here, and nobody's going to know, and that, well, that may only expect 40 people, but those 40 people will be without, right? Or if you're in a situation where people needs to be tested and you're denying them tests because that's expensive, are you in line? Is that the movement of God? Is that in line with what God is talking about? Right? If you are in a situation where you know that you may owe someone something, or you have done something to someone else, and and it's hard because your ego, but you're like, we've all forgotten about it, nobody's gonna think about it, but that keeps nagging at you. That every time you have to look at that person, you don't feel so great about yourself, right? Or if you're in a situation where, maybe you're in a relationship or someone else is looking really good to you, and, that need, to have that immediate need, that can become like an idol, right? That chase, that lust, that can become sort of an idol, right? Not saying the heart can't move where it needs to move, but if you haven't taken care of this situation right here before you move over into this another situation, is that the heart of God? Is that a heart of empathy? Right? It's easy to talk about things like drugs and alcohol as bad those, but the truth is that wine is all throughout the Bible, right? So going to clubs, like, that's the bad thing to do. Those are sort of the easy things in the natural world. But the more challenging things is like, how is our movement? If you see someone who is in need, are you apt to help? Right? The meek shall inherit the earth, right? Throughout the Bible, it's talking about how we have to be there for the people who have the least, right? And we're always we're in a culture where the wealthiest and the most popular people are the ones who are always exalted. But is that creating an environment that promotes love? So all these sort of things that we think about to sort of expand and look outside of just sort of not just the immediate easy things to target, the person who is high on the corner, the person the petty thief, those are easy people to look at. But how do we look about how these sort of movements, because I would argue that the idols of money and power have helped to create the situation that we are in now. And that's affecting millions and millions of people, while that petty thief is affecting what, 3 or 4? So we want to think about, again, that your heart and how and the changing of your heart, and how is there something that's covering it? Is something that's keeping you from forgiving somebody? Is there something that's keeping you from really doing what you really want to do for fear of stability or for fear of losing status? You just want to look at that, right? So I hope this word is useful for someone, and I also want to send out, words of prayer and encouragement to people who are in Oregon and people who are in California who are dealing with wildfires right now, to the women who are in those ICE detention centers who have been a victim of that doctor, people in Louisiana, particularly in Lake Charles, where they're underwater. We want to send out our words of encouragement and prayer to you, okay? And so prayer chat will be tomorrow at 1:30. The information will be above or below. And if I don't see you, I hope to see you next week. All right, have a beautiful week, everyone.